Welcome back to After the Silence. Today's conversation is one that carries so many layers: grief, love, trauma, motherhood, addiction, mental illness, survival, and what it means to continue living after profound loss. Today, I'm sitting down with Brandi Vandenberg. Brandi lost her husband unexpectedly after years of walking beside his struggles with mental illness and substance abuse. What makes her story especially powerful is the honesty she brings to the complicated realities of loving someone deeply while also surviving the impact of her pain. This conversation is tender, raw, and incredibly human. Thank you, Brandi, for joining me. And I would like to start with you telling the listeners a little about who Rio was.
Rio was creative. He was creativity embodied. He was really, really smart, GT level kind of smart. I always said he had more music in his pinky finger than like anybody had in their soul. It was who he was.
Yeah.
Um, Creative, funny. Oh my gosh, so funny. Like you were always laughing. Um, so musically inclined. He was a guitar player. But not just guitar, he could play anything. You give him, like, 15 minutes with an instrument, and he'd have it figured out. It was ridiculous. We he was creating constantly in his head. He was listening critically to music all the time. He didn't read a lot because we think he was actually dyslexic,
Mhm.
possibly, because our son is. Um, but he was always creating stories in his head. He was just super creative. Eventually got his degree to be a teacher, um, taught science, kind of was in and out of that. That's a whole nother journey. Um, but deep in who he was a musician and a creative.
Yeah.
Uh,
So what drew you to him when you first met?
Music. We met through music. We met this is what sounds terrible, and I get teased for this all the time. He was my first husband's roommate, and everybody's like, "Oh." I'm like, "No, no, no,
Uh-huh.
it wasn't like that. I swear to God, it wasn't like that." Um, he he was my type, tall, that was just like a thing. But I was heavily, fully dating my first husband when we met. Um, but we really bonded on music that we liked, songwriting that we liked. Um, I ended up going out a lot with my first husband and him, like, as a trio, we would go out and do stuff all the time. Got
Yeah.
to know him very well that way. And he was kind of evolved into being my best friend. And it was through I wouldn't have met him if I hadn't decided to join the band while I was a music major in college. So,
So
music,
fun.
yeah.
So when y'all got married, what was the beautiful parts of your marriage and life together?
I knew if anything ever happened, and this is gonna sound so silly, if, like, the zombie apocalypse happened and I was abducted, I know without a doubt, I would be rescued, he would be there. Like, I did he would go in guns blazing, whatever, like, he would risk everything, like,
Yeah.
for me. I knew that. He would always have my back on anything, very defensive of me always. Um, I know that despite everything that he grappled with, he would always say that the reason he was still alive was because of me,
Yeah.
and he respected that a lot, and he was just lots and lots and lots of very silly, goofy laughter. He just so funny. Just he could find humor in so many things. Sometimes humor where it really shouldn't have been. We had a lot of cringy, like, "Oh god, don't do that," kinda
Yeah.
moments, but, um, just funny, funny, funny.
Yeah, I resonate with that because how you're describing Rio is a lot like how Kaylin was.
Mhm.
And so I definitely can feel that and remember those ways of how he
Mhm.
was, and so, yeah, definitely, especially, like, the zombie apocalypse, oh my gosh, yeah, Ellen would definitely, like, no doubt.
Yeah, yeah. We'd survive. We would totally
Yeah,
survive.
we would
Yeah.
totally survive.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So, what do you think people misunderstand about someone struggling with addiction or mental illness?
That it 100% defines who they are as a person because that's more like a parasite attached to the person rather than who they really are, because I always felt like I had to offer a disclaimer about, and all of our musician friends, and he was very public about mental health issues, very open about that. He would tell that to anybody.
Yeah,
Anybody. The substance abuse part, not so much, but everybody just knew kinda that's who he was, but who he really was creative and smart and talented. He just happened to have this other stuff that was
yeah,
just kinda stuck to him.
yeah, and as like a he even though he was open about it, there was that silent struggle
Mhm,
that he had. So
mhm,
you said that he loved deeply but struggled to love himself. Can you
mhm.
talk more about that?
Yeah, he was fiercely loyal and loved, like he loved, his mother very, very, very much, and I know I won't go into all of that because, she there were lots of issues in his childhood, and despite all of that, he still cared very deeply and wanted to be protective of her. He Again, if it was the zombie apocalypse, I was getting saved. Everybody was getting saved, but he just never could direct that and look at himself and care for himself the way he tried to care for everyone else.
Yeah,
Um, it was almost like he felt like he didn't deserve it. I We get that vibe, like it would be the last thing on his mind. He would find reasons not to do things for himself, like meaningful things for himself.
yeah,
He did a lot of self-medication, but with things
yeah,
like, I need that truck. That will make me look like a better person. I need this this guitar because it's gonna make me a better player. I need, like, he was constantly trying to improve himself and his standing with
yeah,
things or something that would be status
mhm.
to
Things
elevate
and then
himself.
probably, like, the quick fixes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just, immediate, what how can I fix this quickly instead of the dealing with and sitting with whatever it was that he was going through. I've learned that's a thing that a lot of people struggle with is sitting with those hard moments. Whatever you're grieving and going through and really truly sitting with those emotions, that can be tough because it can be ugly,
Mhm. Oh, for
but
sure.
that's part of the healing process.
Yeah.
What was it like carrying the role of a partner and caregiver at the same time?
Exhausting, in weird ways gratifying, and it's probably what kept me going for 20 plus years because it became your mission. It
Yeah,
became like what you did. This is my role. This is I am the rock. I am the center that everything has to I have to hold everything together. It became an identity, um, but exhausting, and I didn't know how exhausting it really, really, really was until it wasn't, until it was gone.
yeah, because that was
Um
your normal.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
How did his struggles impact you emotionally over the years?
I didn't do anything for myself. All of my mental energy was focused on him or the kids or making sure that what he was dealing with, I minimized the impact on the kids as much as I could. I tried to act as a buffer in between. So all of my mental and emotional energy was surrounding how can I redirect, deflect the stuff he was dealing with, and then also be mom and do all of those things. And then I ended up doing a lot of stuff that you would in a two-parent household, you would expect both parents to be doing, but he could not find the energy or the mental energy to do it, and so I would have to carry that too. So I was kind of mom and dad sometimes, a lot of times.
Yeah.
Mom all the time, dad a lot of the times.
And
Um
then doing, your your job and, everything else around the on the out
Mhm,
external part, you're having to do those roles as well, so
mhm.
and that's definitely exhausting. So what did people not see behind closed doors?
So, I think I mentioned this before, so, like, the negative things I didn't see was his self-deprecating behavior, um, which was just all the time. They they also didn't see there were the good things too. You didn't see, like, it I cycled this back to, the question that I got a lot from people who didn't know him well or us well, "Why do you stay? Why don't you just be done with that?" And it's so much more complicated than that. And I look at it like if somebody had kidney disease or cancer or something like that, I wouldn't be like, "Oh, this is too much. I'm out. Bye." And his mental illness came from a place that he had no control over. None of this was self-imposed. He was dealing with something that was organic, something that he was born with and then due to circumstances developed circumstances as a child. So a majority of this came to him out beyond his control.
Yeah,
But he just didn't have the tools to really deal with it. And behind closed doors, the struggle that he had, the painful effort that I think he wanted to do better. He wanted to do these things for himself and was struggling with finding the motivation to be able to.
yeah,
Um, so there was a lot there was a lot.
and I know when we had talked before, when you mentioned this, it's like people on the outside, they say, "Why don't you leave?" And it's like, no matter what, it could be the same type of mental illness or addiction, but from one your relationship to another relationship, they're totally different.
Mhm.
No, not one is the same.
No.
So even if we were to say, I would never stay in if this happened, until you're actually in it,
Yeah.
you really don't know truly. And God, that's something I've learned. And I'm just like, I can't tell you really what to do because until you're actually experiencing whatever that situation is, you really truly can't say that you wouldn't. So
Yeah. And when you have that you love somebody that deeply,
yeah,
and that has to have been there because to make it through, like, the first 5 years, one thing I mean, he had issues, but they weren't as severe as later, that kind of I don't wanna say dug the hole deeper, that sounds negative, but it dug you in deeper
yeah,
into that what at that point really felt like a partnership in how I'm gonna be here beside you, we're gonna make this work, we're gonna figure this out, here's the plan. We did a lot of that until we just kept making the plan, and then the plan didn't work, so we made another plan, and then but that was something that never stopped. I mean,
yeah.
we're constantly, "Okay, that didn't work, let's do this," and
I feel
that
like
was like
that's life in general. That's parenting. That's
yes. We never gave, or I never gave up the plan,
yeah,
and he might have maybe given up on it. Well, he did, and that's why we had to start another one. Like, I'm
right.
sorry, I keep bouncing on my stuff.
So what about like I know you said that you buffered as much as you could for the kids. Did they have any idea that stuff was going on with
Yeah.
him?
Yeah, and the reason for that isn't that I wasn't necessarily trying to hide things from them, and even if I was, one of the problems that he had, and this goes back to, I guess, his upbringing, is I grew up, if there was something going on in my family that my parents were dealing with, they didn't tell us, everything was perfectly fine and we just went about our life. He didn't have that modeled. And so if he was struggling, he was he would tell the kids. He would tell them things that you really shouldn't tell your kids. And it would be an after the fact thing when I would find out that he would share all of this stuff, particularly with our daughter. They were very, very, very close and sort of kindred spirits in a way. And he was sharing things with her that was like, oh my God, why? Why did you do that? So I try to minimize the impact of behaviors, not necessarily hide them. I would try to be open and explain because at that point, when he was putting stuff out, just putting stuff out there, I needed to mitigate that the best I could. So I was
Right.
running interference more than I was trying to shield. Shielding
Right.
wasn't possible. His personality was, I think, a little too big and a little too open. So
Yeah. So, as we go into the next part of some of these questions, I know that still carries some tenderness, so I want to move through it gently. What can you share what that season of loss looked like?
from the beginning of when we
Yeah.
lost him,
Yes.
um, it was very weird. I had spent pretty much our entire relationship half expecting this day to come, but fearing that it was almost like fearing the inevitable, which now feels like it was definitely fearing the inevitable because it happened. He was often suicidal, had suicidal ideations, and would talk about harming himself all the time. And I was one of those that I never, even though in my mind I'm like, this is an attention thing, this is what this is, I could never just run with that because I knew that the possibility existed that I wasn't. So that you take every cry for help seriously was my mantra. He'd done a couple of attempts, which I don't think were serious attempts. I think he had been drinking way too much once, so it wasn't like a premeditated, calculated thing. Um, and so when I found him, it was this weird detachment of, well, here we are. Um, because I had been fearing that for so many years, I had half braced myself, if that makes it. I felt like it's either going to happen or it's not, and I was fully prepared for both.
Yeah.
Not really fully prepared, but I had headspace for both, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Um, making the phone calls, I think that, like, to my parents, to my brother, to, like, one of his best friends, I think were all in that same space. So it wasn't a out of the blue, I had no idea moment really for them. It was like, "Oh, well, here we are," kind of thing.
Yeah. It
Um
happened.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, there it is. Um, and we had had a scare with him about a year before. Was it a year before? I've lost my time is messed up when I think back to how I did very messed up.
Yeah. I'm right there with you on that.
Yeah, I'm like, was that a year before or 6 months before? I can't remember. He had had what turned out to be a failed attempt that I didn't know was a failed attempt until way later, where I woke up and I thought it was a sleep apnea problem because I used to run a sleep lab and it really tracked like that because he had terrible apnea. I woke up, went and got coffee, came back, and he was still really, really, really out. He was actively dying at that point, and
My
so
gosh.
I could not he was breathing barely, but he wasn't dead, and we had EMS had to come get him, and they couldn't revive him either. He was breathing, but they could not he was it was bad. They got him out to the ambulance. I'm calling people thinking, "Oh my god, this is I always thought it would be mental health that got him. It's sleep apnea. I was like, bah. And it turns out that when they got him in the ambulance, they administered Narcan and he woke up. So they
Yeah.
found things in his system. And eventually he acknowledged that he had purposefully overdosed.
Yeah.
But so that was then. So I had kind of had a pre scare on that, and so it's almost like a practice run. If that sounds it sounds awful,
Yeah.
but it's sort of like, okay, we walked down this, and then I got pulled back, and
Yeah.
then so
Ooh, talk about messing with your nervous system. Oh my goodness.
oh, that's a whole nother conversation
Yeah,
about.
yeah. Because
But
I mean, which was one of my questions I was gonna ask, like, how did your body and nervous system respond after everything happened?
well, so this kind of seamlessly goes into the conversation of how that all played out. There was a lot of negative emotion within some family relations. There was a lot of support. There was an enormous amount of support because our friends, our mutual friends, understood his challenges and they understood my challenges of being his support, and they were supportive of me. I had an enormous amount of support from people. Um, big challenge with that was navigating my daughter. And she, not that my sons weren't up, they were obviously very upset.
Yeah.
Um, she was, I think, tenfold because they did have a much closer relationship. Um, so that was a rocky road. I was worried about her. I was very, very worried about her for a while. But in terms of your emotional, your physical and emotional system, one thing that was really, really obvious is I I had a lot of the middle of the night, just I felt like somebody had just pulled my guts out crying. Like you can't breathe, like all the air is gone from your heart, your lungs, everything. Like this that feeling of loss, I don't think anybody can describe.
Mm,
And it's heavy's not even the right word. It's like vast. It's crippling for that moment. But one of the things I saw coming out of it was the whole idea of cortisol as a stress hormone and cortisol preventing you from doing things like losing weight and all of that kind of stuff.
yeah.
I suddenly started melting away as I turned, and you know this, I immediately turned to exercise. I turned to working out. I was working twice a week, doing 2 miles every day. And I suddenly, like, that exercise was so good for me. It was so good for my
Yeah.
emotional health
Absolutely.
and my physical health. Because even as I had been trying to exercise before, nothing was doing anything for me, but that stress hormone had stopped
Mhm.
ruling my life. I was clearer headed. I was physically feeling better. I didn't realize how emotionally and physically squashed I had been.
Yeah. You're in a pretty frequent state of fight or flight.
100% literally 24
Yeah.
hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I've literally, like, and that's like not even hyperbole, like at any given moment, it could be crisis. It didn't matter if I was standing in front of my class teaching the Coriolis effect. Suddenly, if I had my phone needed to be near me because if he texted and I missed it, oh my gosh, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And it
Yeah.
wasn't in like in a, I I would say it wasn't in an abusive way, but when you look at it, it was, but it wasn't intentional.
Mhm.
But I was definitely in emotional handcuffs
It
in
was
that
just
sense.
that, like we said before, this was your normal. This is how it was, and you were accustomed to that.
Mhm.
So that you didn't know anything else other than this is what we do, and I need to make sure I'm available, have my phone just in case. That's just how it was.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly right. That's
And you
exactly right.
mentioned that grief revealed like billions of layers of trauma and loss. So what has that discovery process been like?
I'm actively in the middle of it still. Um, for me, like, loss of him as a human obviously hit the hardest. Loss of him as a father, because despite all of the issues, there were definitely bright spots. Um, but I lost I lost music, which was I had been a musician since 4 years old. Um, I was on a music scholarship. I was all state this and I mean, that was music was my life. And that's how we met. And that's what we were playing in bands together until right before COVID. And then when we started playing again, we were still 50 years old and still fronting a band. Like we were still playing.
Yeah.
And after he was gone, it didn't feel right to continue. And so I realized a couple of years ago that I was actually dealing with a whole grief process around the loss of that, because
Yeah.
that had also been my reality for 20 plus years with him. That was our thing. That was what we did. We were like the power couple of the San Antonio music scene for a while. Like it was, oh, Rio and Brandi, Rio and Brandi. And just to kind of have that free fall away from it
Yeah.
was was hard. I tried, like I said, even going and singing karaoke was hard. Because I'd always want to look to this side because he'd always be right there. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Those things that we did. And I know I'd mentioned this before, that same thing with Kaylin and working out. That
mhm,
was our life. We did that together. Where I mean, the
mhm,
gym life was our life together. And it was just so weird that I struggled to go back to the gym. I struggled to work out. And so when you had told me that before, I was like, okay. So it wasn't just me. Like I was like, what
mm-mm,
is wrong with me? But hearing that you were struggling with the same thing with music, it makes complete sense that that's how our lives were with them.
mhm.
And then suddenly it was stripped away and we're like, "Okay, I can go there, but it doesn't feel right."
It's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's and it's the thing, it's hidden. You don't realize that in all the years I worried about the inevitable happening when losing him, I never thought about what else that meant. And music definitely was something that I feel was kind of stolen.
Yeah. So, do you feel, that your grief was ever misunderstood by others?
Mhm.
In what way? How did that look?
Well, I feel like, and I know you probably relate to this too, and you know, all the books that you read, I wanna say, I don't was it you that recommended it? The Irreverent Grief Guide?
No.
Okay, it's such a good book.
I'll have to get that.
Yes. It's an RN that dealt with, like, end of life care and stuff, and she's just a lot of F words in it and things like that, it's great. Um,
Sounds like my kinda book.
yeah, it's great, but it's, that living where we were living at the time, small town, there is this expectation of all of the things you should be doing when you're grieving and doing things like me suddenly working out twice a week. It looked probably like, oh, well, she's fine. Look at that. And no, actually, I'm not. You should hear what's going on in my head as I'm trying to lift that or do this pull up or whatever, because I'm screaming inside.
Yeah.
And I turned when I ran the opposite direction from music, but I am a creative too. And it is very, very much a part of who I am. And so I started writing and throwing myself into that, which is another thing that I was passionate about for a long time, but I never really acted on it. I dabbled and was like, oh, one day. So I started throwing my creative self into that, my expressive self into that,
Mhm.
and then really chasing that. And that also, all of that looks like, oh, look at all these things she's doing. Like, she looks perfectly fine. It's like,
She's happy, nothing's wrong. She just moved on.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
always
not
would
the case.
hesitate. I'd be scared to be like, hey, I did this and this and this. And I would be like, oh, people must think that I'm just next.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not that. It's not
No,
that at all. I if you like I am actively sifting through emotions and um experiences as I'm writing this series. I'm in book 3, I'm wrapping it up, but my main character is dealing with a lot of things that I am pulling from inside of myself,
yeah,
and it is therapeutic. It is cathartic. It is I am working through I've made myself cry on any number of occasions as I'm writing a scene with the character, and it is not directly related, but it is.
yeah,
And it's how I've started to turn the faucet just a little bit to relieve some pressure
yeah.
and let it process through.
I love
So,
that for you. I love that you've been able to find something else to utilize your creative side and putting into your books,
mhm.
and that's so healing.
Yeah.
Um, so I love that for you. Um, so what has love looked like since the loss?
So well, there was a period of being incredibly angry at the world because we had just had our 20th anniversary coming up on our 21st. And then you have the realization, like, when my parents just had like a 60th wedding anniversary, well, unless I live to be 120, that's not happening. I've lost that. That is not anything that will happen for me ever again. That was hard. And then I had this scary realization that I was my grandmother, because my grandmother was a widow and she never remarried. And she was this really cool grandma who went on like those, those tours, like all the old people go on tours
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah.
sit on the bus. Yeah, she did those all the time.
That's
And I was
awesome.
like, oh no, I was kind of like, okay. I was trying to make myself comfortable with the fact that I was just going to be my Nana and I was just going to travel the world with a bunch of other old ladies. And that scared me. At one point, I was like, I was trying to get comfortable with it. Okay, it's just me. This is me. And then I'm like, I don't like that. No. Um, I am I'm not necessarily a solitary creature. And so I did try, I did knee jerk go on like dating apps and then was mortified and then got off of them and then had a massive emotional crisis watching Love is Blind.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So I was watching that and I'm like, these people find love through a freaking wall and I can't even have my life that I want. And so I had already gotten off all the apps and I was like, fine. So I opened up, I got on match.com, which I had not been on. It was the one I had not been on. And and then I opened my account for it and then I decided to, because one of the things I noticed on that is people try to sell themselves. Like, look at me. And I was like, okay, that's part of my distaste, I think. And so I went ahead and made a profile that was unashamedly nerd central. I am not this is me. This is me. And I'm a little weird. I'm a lot weird and kind of quirky, and this is who I am. And that's where I met Scott, who I am now married to.
Yes. I
So
love that.
um I think me not, and I will say this goes back to Rio. Musician through and through. My personal self. I did adopt some things. I don't want to say pretend, but I leaned into things that might not have necessarily been who I was because of Rio. Like, yes, total music, but music absolutely not to the level that he was. But I leaned into it really heavy because of that. And this was where I was getting to just be all of the things that he might have teased me for, or, I could just kind of reset,
Yes.
start over, be all of the things that I knew I was
Who is
openly.
Brandi now? Who
Yes.
is she?
Right. And who
Yeah,
has she been but hasn't been because it didn't fit with what she was, you
right.
know, just sort of like
Exactly.
rip the shirt open and here it no, that sounds terrible.
This is who I am.
Yes. And I did that. And that's how he and I met.
So, what does honoring someone's memory while continuing to live fully look for you now?
Um I I won the lottery on finding some we really feel like we need to write match and tell our story because we could be an ad.
Yeah.
But it was important to me that whoever I met and decided to commit myself to understood that while all of this time that I had with Rio was tumultuous, was hard, but there was an enormous amount of love and that it was important and meaningful and impactful. And there's always going to be pain. There's always going to be hurt. There's always going to be that. And he makes so much space for that. Sometimes I will make an offhanded comment that is just some of the negative in everything that happened coming out in me. And he will be the one to remind me there was also a lot of love. He will be the one to do that. And right over my shoulder, that's Rio. Those are his ashes. And he very early in our relationship said that there is always space for him.
Beautiful.
And he is so incredibly respectful of the kids that way. He is very there for them. He is always there to listen, like when they want to tell stories about their dad. He, it's just seamlessly rolled into our life.
Yeah. And I feel like that's so important when you find somebody else that it's not, because I've heard that there's some it's like it's competition. And they're like, but the person's dead. There's
Yeah,
no competition.
right.
But it's how he's able to hold space and still, even with your children, just to hold space for them as well and allow them to speak freely about their dad, because it was their dad and they loved their dad and he was your husband and you loved him and y'all shared this life together. And that that's never going to go away. And for him to love all of you through that and hold the space for you is so beautiful. And also, I believe, helps with your healing as well.
100%. 100%. If I have because they happen, those random dreams, and you wake up and it's just like someone just punched you in the gut. And I walk out and I'm crying, and he's like, no questions asked, just,
I got you.
mm-hmm. Because, and that's probably never going to go away.
Yeah, it's not.
No. And that's okay
Right.
because that's grief is how much you loved.
Absolutely. So, with that, what would you say to someone currently sitting in fresh grief?
Lean into it, and you hear that a lot because it's there,
Yeah,
whether you want it or not. And to fight it, to pretend like it's not there is doing yourself a disservice.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And talk to people. You don't necessarily have to talk about things, but let people know that's where you are. Don't
Yes.
try to pretend you're not.
Right.
No matter how much you think they're going to disapprove or judge, it's what judge you just judge right on over there all day long. That's fine.
Mhm.
But
There's so much stigma around grief.
just walk your walk and do what you need to do and stop looking over your shoulder because you're definitely not alone. There's a lot of us out there. And yeah, just you have to do what you have to do for you, and literally nobody else can tell you what it is.
Absolutely. Beautiful. I love that. And also, what would you say to someone loving a partner struggling with addiction and mental illness?
Please have the hard conversation. Put your foot down. Stand up for yourself. Even if I know people are scared of, if I do that, what will they do? They might do something stupid, but they also might not. And I waited way too long to put my foot down. I waited way too long. I enabled without realizing that was what I was doing, because I thought I was trying to help, and that just gave him more excuse. And if I had put my foot down a lot earlier, things might be very different. I'm not saying that I'm responsible. I'm not saying that I'm just saying that in hindsight,
Yeah.
have the hard conversation and you've had a lot of hard conversations, but stand up for yourself. Make yourself as important as you are making their problems.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. And so, what does after the silence mean to you personally?
Well, it just means that my life is my life again. And it means that I'm finding my voice in writing. Um, and it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. I'm a teacher, and I'm looking at shockingly, the end of my career, which is like, come on, come on, come on. Especially in this climate. I'm not that I'm about 5 years away, but um, it just means that I'm finding my voice, not the voice I need to have
Yes.
for everything else.
Your true voice.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that you have your writing. And so, with that, where can listeners find your writing and your work?
Amazon and Barnes and Noble, almost anywhere you can buy books. Um, two of my audiobooks are on Audible and Spotify. The first one is still under Brandi Schonberg.
Okay.
I've rebranded all of my books under my now married name, Vandenberg, BG Vandenberg. But one of the audiobooks is still listed under Schonberg, and I haven't changed that yet. Uh, and I did that because this is this chapter of my life.
Right.
I wrote
Exactly.
them originally under Schonberg, or two of them, and I'm like, I'm about to put the third in the series out under my new name, and that just didn't seem right. And I felt like in order to embrace that change for myself, it was the thing to do. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, and it's BG Vandenberg, Amazon. I think anywhere. I'm on Ingram Spark, so it distributes everywhere, I think.
Perfect. Well, I will definitely include all of that in the show notes. So, if anyone would love to check out her books, definitely they'll be able to click on the show notes and find you.
Awesome.
So I want to thank you so much for your honesty, your vulnerability, and your willingness to share the complexity of this kind of grief. I know that your story is going to make so many people feel less alone because there's many of us that are going through this. And to everyone who's listening and carrying grief, trauma, or love alongside loss, thank you for letting us walk with you today, and remember that nothing you felt while listening was wrong.